during the medieval period, monks reading the Bible supposed that there were 4 levels of meaning to be gleaned within it. These 4 levels were the literal, the moral, the allegorical, and the anagogical. I'm going to dwell on that last one, the 4th level, which, as I understand it, was considered the highest of the levels of meaning. Anagoge, I think it comes through Latin, and it comes originally from Greek, Anagoge. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right either. And it means to climb and to ascend. And we might bear in mind an old Greek thinker who has influenced the Western tradition immensely, Plato, who gives to us the tale of the cave as a story for understanding the effects of education upon the soul. Plato asks us to imagine being bound, chained inside a dark cave, and having been born and grown up in these chains. And our gaze is forever fixed upon a wall, or where light twinkles and shadows dance, and we see the different forms moving across the field of our perception. We see birds, we see dogs, cats, we see other people, we see houses, we see trees. We see all of these forms. And Plato suggests that what would happen if we were broke free from our chains and were to realize the nature of our situation, to realize that these shadows upon the wall which we had always known and taken for reality were indeed shadows, and were therefore second order echoes of the true reality. And so what we might do if we were liberated from our chains would be to look behind us and to climb or to ascend out of the deep cave in which we were bound, to trace the origins of these shadowy forms which we had been contemplating our whole life. We have seen many trees, but what is the form of a tree? What is it that is causing this echo of different trees that we encounter? And so we might leave the cave and we might ascend out of the cave, a climb out into the daylight, where we would behold the sun and its light, and we would realize that it was from this sun that these forms had come, and that the shadows on the cave were caused by this, a greater source. So this is Plato's theory of the forms, which has come to structure the metaphysics of the West immensely over the past 2,000 years. But I recount that story because I think it helps shine some light on this idea of anagoge. Another word that might be more familiar is transcendence. And it's interesting because a transcendence means the same thing as anagoge. It means to climb or to move beyond. To climb or to move beyond anagoge and transcendence. And both of these things are precisely what we're doing when we're leaving the cave in Plato's analogy. And so there's an idea there that if we are able to move beyond and to climb, then we are able to attain a greater perception. We're able to see more fully and more completely. And we are able to dwell more in the presence of the truth. For Plato, to dwell more in the realm of the forms of goodness, truth, and beauty. And the connection's interesting, right? That it is in a moving beyond that we come to approach these transcendental forms. So that meaning, moving beyond, transcendence, climbing, it's super interesting to me. I mean, climbing, for example, is very practical and real, because if you do go high up, if you do go and climb a mountain, if you ever have, it's I mean, you are rewarded at the zenith of the mountain with a heightened perception. It's rather simple, really. Like, of course you are, because you get to the top of the mountain and you have this 360-degree view, you have this panorama, and you are able to see the whole path that you have come up. You're able to see everything is thrown into a glorious new light now here atop the mountain. The destination of this long climb and this long ascent upwards, there is a reward, and the reward is a kind of heightened consciousness, a kind of new awareness, and a beholding of everything in its glory. It's a unifying point, right? Where before, on the trail upwards, we might have only been able to see a particular path up the mountain. Now at the top, we are able to behold in unity all the paths. We are able to see where they will lead. So keeping this idea of climbing a mountain in mind might be really helpful for us when we think about the meaning of these words, transcendence and anagoge. Because Plato's cave starts down below and ends up above, and that pattern is the pattern of climbing a mountain. Even though Plato starts in a cave, we could think of the escape from Plato's cave as an ascent, as a climbing up of a mountain to reach a heightened, more complete, more whole consciousness of what it is, of reality. And so what I wanted to kind of discuss about this topic is like the way in which meaning itself is connected to transcendence. Because look, if we are reading something, or if we are watching a film or a TV show, or we're engaging in some kind of story, let's say, if it's not going anywhere, then we lose interest, right? And like, what is that? Because like, obviously, like, we're not going anywhere physically. Like, if we're reading a book, maybe we're moving a little bit around, but generally, like, we might be in the same area physically, geographically. Same if we're watching a film or something. So like, materially speaking, we're not going anywhere at all. But if the story doesn't go anywhere, then it's kind of like, wasn't that good, was it? You know? And so I find that really interesting, because it kind of implies that good stories do go somewhere. And where do they go? Well, I might suggest that the stories which lead us towards the transcendent, towards the beyond, towards the glory at the top of the mountain, are the stories which are meaningful. Because there is a kind of journey going on in our hearts, in our innermost being, isn't there? We may not physically be journeying anywhere. And if we were asked where we had gone in the last few months, perhaps nowhere at all. We'd just been staying in the same place. But it's not true though, is it, entirely? Because there is a kind of movement in our hearts where if we read something meaningful, or if we learn something meaningful, or if we watch something meaningful, if we engage in something meaningful, music, of course, does this to us too, because music, when it starts through to when it ends, does move us. It is in that movement precisely that is to be found its meaning. It moves us beyond, in a way. It moves us beyond and up, perhaps. You know, it good music, good art, good stories are, they transcend. They move us into the transcendent. And so this is the mystery of their attractive force, is that they do precisely move us in our hearts on our journeys through life. But move us beyond. That's the meaning of transcendence, beyond. And beyond climbing up. Okay, so there's two kind of ideas there, like going up. So going up is like going up more into the heavenly realm. This is what we're able to behold. If you go up a mountain at night, you will see the heavens, and you will feel more, you feel like you have entered into the domain of the gods. This is a very primordial experience to ascend the mountain and to look up into the sky, into the heavens, because the mountaintop is the place that is closest to the heavens. So there is a going up and there's a going beyond. So what's this going beyond? Like, it's a transcendence. It's a kind of growth, I suppose, but it's more than merely growth, isn't it? Because when we are truly moved by a piece of music or by a story, then we feel in a different way than we did before. We see in a different way than we did before. And in some ways, we are able to move beyond those feelings. We are able to let them work themselves out. This is the meaning of the Greek idea of catharsis, which is the beholding of suffering in art, suffering through art. If a piece of music is able to hit a deep note of sorrow, which has been vague and nebulous within us, and yet is crystallized and made manifest, and we are able to move with that and move through that, then there is a catharsis in that, and a way in which we are no longer prisoners to that sorrow, but instead are able to let the sorrow fully unfold and fully play itself out. And then in some way we're able to get beyond that and to see the sorrow from a new and a higher plane, slightly higher up the mountain. We're able to look back and say, yes, that has its place, that is part of this story, and a part that is necessary to the journey that I'm on. And so I feel like this transcendent aspect to art is really the apotheosis, the height, the zenith, the apex, the top of the mountain in any story, in any creative work, is the way in which it leads our hearts beyond and up. And it's a strange mystery. I cannot fully explain, how that happens. I suppose I wanted to offer this reflection because it's an intuition really that I've been pursuing for a while, and it feels really real because even when someone's speaking to you, right, even when they're telling you a story about their day or about their life, okay, like, where is this going is a looming question. Like, nonsensical speech is speech which is going nowhere. This kind of is an intuitive reality in our social worlds. It's like meaning actually is the way in which words cohere into stories, and those stories cohere into a movement forward, a movement beyond, and ideally perhaps a movement up ultimately. But perhaps we need to go down before we go up. But like, transcendence is connected to the notion that we're living inside stories, and that meaning is intimately connected to the way in which we have a felt sense, a felt intuition that the story is moving forward and moving towards something. It's moving forward and beyond and towards something. And in a sublime piece of music, in a symphony, for example, a classical symphony, these ideas are all there, just in that microcosm, right? It does move us beyond, and it does move us up towards. And that's where words fail, right? Because towards that which is beyond, that which towards we are climbing, towards which we are ascending. And so, yeah, I wanted to offer a bit of a reflection about Anagoge and Transcendence, which both are words that seem to mean basically the same thing. And so, like, for biblical interpretation, the idea would be that you're reading the Bible, and ultimately the question is how it moves us, how it transforms our hearts, like how we are touched and we are moved in our thought, in our feeling, in our action, in our relationships by that. And of course, it does not apply to the Bible only, it applies to any book that one reads, or any cultural material one reads, or any conversation one has, or any just a day's experience going on a walk, doing something. Like, actually, like, the whole structure of our life partakes in this story in a way. How is this moving me beyond what? Beyond old paradigms, beyond old ways of seeing, beyond old identities, beyond limited ways of being that I have inhabited. Because that seems to be an essential part of our being in the world as human beings, is that we do move through emotions, identities, situations. There is a movement to this life. And the evolution of our soul, or perhaps better, the transformation of our soul, is connected to transcendence, the way in which we are able to get beyond. And it's not easy to get beyond, is it? Because there's habit. This is the way it's always been. I've always thought this way. I've always behaved this way. I've always been this way. There is a certain habit to that. But my feeling is that art, beauty, truth, goodness, these transcendentals, they kind of can pierce the veil of that habit, and they can break through like a glimpse and like a beam of light. And in that, we are drawn up towards them, and we are drawn to move. Is because these ideas are connected, right? Like, the summit of the mountain, when you behold the summit of the mountain, it's glorious and beautiful in the distance. It is a glorious peak, and it is a beauty to behold, and it is attractive in that sense. And so, like, that is drawing us towards it. But like, the journey up the mountain is a step by step. To ascend the mountain, we must move beyond in all sorts of ways. Even if it was a practical thing, if we were climbing Mount Everest, there would be a way in which we move beyond the normal level of oxygen in the air. And there's a way in which we move beyond our comfort zone. There's like all sorts of ways that we would need to transcend, to move beyond. So, like, part of the idea of the apotheosis, the height, the zenith, the apex, the highest glorious principle, the transcendental principle, is that it calls us from up on high, from a lofty place. It calls to us in love, because it is, that's a form of love in which it's shining its glory down, and in our beholding of it, we are awestruck and attentive and amazed and drawn in. And then the love in our hearts is the way in which we respond to that. Like, do we turn from it and cower into the cave and block out the glorious beams of that light? And that is really a pattern of pride, of hubris, and of kind of trying to cover and block out what is real and true, and a kind of settling for the second order shadowy echoes of the cave, which is a real pattern of being. Like, we all do that sometimes, and that is a pattern of being in relationship to what is glorious and what is calling us, most certainly. But then the other option is to turn to it in love. So it's like the love that comes to us, we respond in a communion of love, and the movement in love towards the summit of the mountain is a continual moving beyond. It's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice of this moment, of my comfort right now, of my thoughts, my beliefs, my worldview right now, are saying, look, perhaps this is limited, and perhaps I'm being called to move beyond this. And there's a trepidation in that, an uncertainty in that, an anxiety, a fear in that, because we are moving beyond in a real way. And so, of course, there's trepidation there, because it's no easy feat to climb a mountain. But yeah, but you know, there's a way in which that is the most meaningful way to engage with reality. Like, that is what we are called to do. It feels to me anyway. I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, I'm just pursuing an intuition, I guess. I'm trying to figure it out, but it feels this way. It feels this way in music, in film, in just conversations we have, just in life, like the whole drama and the unfolding of life and the meaning of it does seem connected to the way in which the transcendent calls to us in love from up on high, and the way in which we either turn from and cover from the light, or turn to in love and are moved beyond ourselves continually into the infinite glory. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate your time for watching this video. Would love to hear any comments and any thoughts, if you have any, down in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.